We're going to go through the basal ganglia and the interior structures of a brain and what they look like on imaging. So let's first do some 3D views because these basal ganglia, we're going to see them on slices, and you see them just on slices in the anatomy lab as well. They are spread out across the brain. So what I want you to see here, the caudate nucleus here in pink in the left image, see how it's large and bulbous in the anterior region, and it arches up and it curls back and goes under. So when you're looking at slices, you may see an axial slice where you have actually caudate nucleus on the anterior and posterior side. If you're looking at a more coronal slice, you're going to see it on the top and bottom. But the other important part is the putamen. So we have the caudate nucleus in pink and this putamen in yellow. And then the thalamus will then arrive. I want you to have this sense of where they are three-dimensionally before we look at them on slices. Here's another really cool 3D view where in this case the caudate nucleus is in yellow along with the putamen and globus pallidus. And we have some of the other structures as well. This website, I just want to point out, is a super helpful website. I'm using their brain slices as well as their MRI images for the rest of this. So here is the brain slices. I want you to see this brain slice. We can name them first before we look at things on imaging. So we have the caudate nucleus right butted up against the lateral ventricles, and then we have the putamen in orange. Then between the two is known as the internal capsule, and that's where the white matter fiber tracts are located. This little spot here is the septum pellucidum dividing the two ventricles. And then we have the corpus callosum, the body, and the rostrum. And the insula can be found here. Now let's see those on imaging. So we have the corpus callosum across the two hemispheres above the two lateral ventricles. We see the septum pellucidum dividing the two. We now see the caudate nucleus as well as the putamen. We have the insula, and then we also have the white matter of the internal capsule. Now let's look a little bit more posterior. We have the caudate nucleus, which is now getting smaller as we move posterior. We have the putamen as well as the globus pallidus. And then we have the internal capsule that's between the caudate nucleus and the putamen globus pallidus. Again with the corpus callosum and septum pellucidum, as well as the fornix, and the hypothalamus, and the third ventricle located there, as well as the insula. Now let's see if we can find these on imaging. So we have the corpus callosum, septum pellucidum, fornix, and the hypothalamus with the third ventricle. And now let's see that caudate nucleus. We have the putamen, globus pallidus, internal capsule. Now, even more posterior, we have the corpus callosum and fornix. We have at this point our caudate nucleus, now our head and tail. So remember in this lower picture, we have the tail portion that down below as well as the portion up here. Now we have this large area here, and that's the thalamus. And then way over here to the side in yellow is the putamen and then the internal capsule. You can actually see fibers going all the way down from the cerebrum through the midbrain and down into the pons. This location here, you can just see the hippocampus. You can see it a little more clearly. It usually has a little swirl to it. And then we have the midbrain region. This little red dot here is known as the red nucleus. And then this dark area is known as the substantia nigra, and that's where a lot of dopamine is, and that area is affected in people with Parkinson's. Now this is the pons. Now let's find those areas here. We have the lateral ventricle, septum pellucidum, corpus callosum, and fornix, third ventricle. We have the caudate nucleus. It's really not a structure that you're going to see the inferior part, but you can see just a remnant there of the superior part. Then we have this big old round area, that's the thalamus, the internal capsule. We have our putamen, globus pallidus. Those kind of had to be drawn in. You don't see them as clearly here. This is the hippocampus. Now we have our midbrain and pons. Moving a little farther back, we can see these structures again. This here is a really cool picture showing the fiber tracks throughout the brain. So this here in color here is the depiction of the white matter tracks. And you can see this lateral view as well. So looking at these same structures from the axial view. So we have the corpus callosum in light blue with the specific regions. We have the fornix. The caudate nucleus again is butted right up against the lateral ventricle with the putamen and globus pallidus. And then we have the thalamus, the large structure there. And then we have the internal capsule. We have the anterior and the posterior leg of it. Now let's see those. Those can be seen a little more clearly here on MRI, where we have our fornix and our corpus callosum. We have the caudate nucleus here bulging into the lateral ventricles. We have the putamen and globus pallidus and the thalamus. We have the internal capsule. We can see the white matter of that, as well as the insula region. So here's a nicer image, something that would be a little more representative of what you may see on an exam, that you should be able to identify these structures. We should see caudate nucleus, the putamen, the globus pallidus, the thalamus. The internal capsule is not as clear in this view, but those other structures are very clear in this view. And that's it.